I'm hoping it's because they couldn't tell it was handmade. 100 grams of yarn problem is going to be a common theme here, but I think the girlies who hate purling will understand. Hello, my name is Carla. I've been knitting for 11 months and these are my projects. So the very first project I have to talk about is, of course, my folklore cardigan, which I am wearing right now. This is my pride and joy. This is like the proudest I've ever been of anything I've ever made. It's even pilling a little bit because I love it so much that I wear it all the time. I call myself an outfit repeater because I pretty much wear a variation of this outfit, or at least I have been since I made this. I'm a huge fan of Taylor Swift, who isn't? I love her folklore album. I love the vibes of the folklore era, and that album really means a lot to me. And I, of course, had to knit this cardigan that she wears in her music videos and that she sells as merch. I decided to follow probably the second most popular cardigan pattern. I think the most popular one is the Lion brand pattern. I ended up following the Amy Gunderson pattern. The reason for that is the Amy Gunderson pattern, I think, looked a little bit more true to the original cardigan. I also noticed that the Lion brand cardigan was worsted weight, while the Amy Gunderson one was DK, and I don't live in a super warm climate, so I prefer to wear DK. I think the fabric isn't as bulky, it looks more flowy, and I like it a lot. That said, even though it is DK instead of worsted, it is very warm. I've been wearing this a lot outdoors for an evening, outdoor dining, things like that, and it's kept me nice and cozy. I actually, ever since I started knitting, I fully believe in the magic of natural fibers of wool. It is warm, breathable. It's great. I say that like I've never heard of wool before. That's true. I actually didn't wear that much wool before I started knitting. Anyway, so this pattern, I really enjoyed working on this pattern. So I started working on this in, I want to say, the beginning of August. And I'm making this with my friend. My friend is still working on it. We casted it on together, and I loved working on it so much that I decided I wanted to finish it by when I went to the Eras tour for the second time in New Orleans. I went to night 2. It was the night with Sabrina. It was the night where she sang Hits Different and Welcome to New York. I had a great time. Anyway, I wanted to be able to wear this cardigan to the Eras tour, which gave me about 6 to 8 weeks to finish it, something like that. And I had a whole bunch of other projects I was also finishing. So I really got disciplined about finishing this project. It wasn't that hard because I think it is a really fun project to work on. I surprised myself so much. I actually had never worked on cables before, except my own kind of practice cabling. I had never used a cable pattern. I had never worked off of charts, but I found this pattern to be so logical, and it just made sense. The repeat was easy to understand, and I was able to memorize it. So I think I spent just a few minutes each time the pattern changed to understand the pattern. But besides that, I was mostly doing it by memory. So I do highly recommend this pattern. That said, it is by no means it will not babysit you. So if you don't really understand knit stitches and decreases, and if you don't understand how to read charts, if you have difficulty reading patterns where they say repeat this part or do this much moss stitch in this many stitches, if you can't figure out what that means, then maybe this is not the pattern for you. I have been getting a lot of questions from people on TikTok asking me for help on the pattern, and they're like, oh, how did you do this part? And I'm like, well, it says it in the pattern. It tells you everything you need to know, but it doesn't help you, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I fully loved working on this. It flew off the needles. I have been wearing it ever since I wore it to the Eras tour. I loved wearing it there. It was really hot because it's New Orleans and it was October, and I didn't need to be wearing a cardigan in that weather, but I liked wearing it and it was really nice. One thing is that nobody complimented my sweater, and I'm hoping it's because it looked good, not because I'm hoping it's because they couldn't tell it was handmade, not because it looked bad, but I like to think that it looks good. I'm very proud of it. Like I said, I've been wearing it since then. I also wore it to the Sabrina Carpenter tour. I think Sabrina, you know, is very Taylor adjacent. She was at the Eras Tour show that I went to, so it felt right. So I wore it to the Sabrina concert in more of a Sabrina style, and I just think that it goes well with so many things. Besides the fact that I made it myself, I think that it is such a nice piece to have in my wardrobe because it just like goes really nicely with a lot of things. So I really like wearing it. One thing from working on this is that I noticed I did not quite understand how much it would grow. I think I made a little 4x4 swatch. It might have even been like a 3x4 swatch, and I thought that was enough. And I don't think that was enough for me to truly understand what this fabric would do. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I'm using Knit Pick Swish DK in the colors Bear and Black, and I didn't know how much it would stretch. So the sleeves are a little long. I am considering putting it in the dryer. I haven't washed it yet, even though I've been wearing it all the time. I think I should put it in the dryer probably, and I think it'll shrink back up. I think that's what you're supposed to do with superwash, so I will give an update if I ever do that. The last thing is that I had actually never seen a folklore cardigan in person before I went to the Eras Tour, or I hadn't looked that closely. I thought from looking at all the pictures online that the stripes were black. They're actually a dark gray. So that's one kind of regret, not regret. I do really like the way the black looks, so it's like, it's fine. But technically, if you wanted to make it true to the original cardigan, it would be gray. So yeah. The next project I'm going to talk about is this granny square baby blanket that I made. I don't have it right now because I already gave it away, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. So I don't know how this happened, but somehow 4 of my friends had or are having babies this year in 2024. And since it coincided with, you know, me learning how to crochet and knit, I've been making presents for these babies all year. I've made blankets for all of them. I made outfits for a few. I'm gonna make the outfits for the rest of them. I'll share them all sometime. But I made this blanket for the 3rd baby of the year, and I thought it turned out really nicely. I used hobbii baby cotton in 6 different colors, and I made a bunch of sunburst granny squares. I followed a tutorial that I'm going to put on the screen, and I just added 1 extra row of double crochets to make it a little bit bigger. And then I followed just a classic join as you go border to connect all of them. And I have a few things to say about this one. This was the perfect project for me at the time because I had a lot of things where I wasn't sure if I'd be able to bring knitting in. I think crochet is usually, or in my mind, I guess crochet is less likely to be confiscated at events and like at the airport and stuff. So I happened to be traveling a lot during this time. So I just felt safer bringing crochet hooks with me. It was also, granny squares are really easy to bring with you instead of having to bring like a whole blanket. So I actually made the very first square at Outside Lands. That was really fun. And I made a bunch of them during Outside Lands. I made these like while traveling. I went to New York to see my family. I went to a wedding and I flew, and it was just a nice plain project to have. I have a few comments on my choices. So I think it looks really nice. I think that I'm kind of tired of crocheting with cotton because it's just not, it hurts my hands a little bit. I think it's just not as like stretchy as other types of fabrics. I think that the finished product is very nice, but I think the actual crocheting of it was a little bit challenging for my hands. I think if I were to do a crochet blanket again, I would use some kind of a more stretchier yarn. The other thing is I totally forgot, or this yarn doesn't say to put it in the dryer, so I knew it would shrink, but I did put it in the dryer because, you know, baby parents are going to do that, and I just wanted to see what would happen. It did shrink quite a bit, but I'm glad at least I got the shrinking out, so hopefully it won't shrink again too much if they wash it and dry it again. I think that I need to pay a little bit more attention on the yarns I get before I make things for, you know, babies and their parents. But other than those 2 things, I think I am really happy with the way this one turned out, and I hope that they enjoy this one. By the way, this blanket is for a baby boy. I think that, like, someone might say that these colors are too girly, but I don't care about that. I picked these colors because the mom, who is my friend, her favorite colors are teal and purple, and, you know, I didn't know the sex of the baby when I was making it, so I just wanted to make something that she would like, and that's generally how I approach baby gifts. So that's how that worked. So now I'm going to talk about baby blanket 2. I mentioned that cotton is a little hard to crochet with. I think that cotton's pretty fine to knit with, so I decided to knit my second blanket in the same colors and have kind of a similar vibe, but different. This is a garter stitch, like mitered square blanket, and it's almost done. Also, I bought all of these colors with these 2 moms in mind. This second, or I guess she's the 4th of 4 moms that I'm making blankets for, and I bought the yarn for both of these 2 moms, and her favorite colors are like the teals and the blues, so I thought I'd just, you know, buy yarn for both of them. And so this is how it looks right now. I have one more square to do, and then I have plans to make a border. I think I will talk a lot more about this one next time, since I haven't been focused on this recently. So next I'm going to be talking about some holiday gifts. So if you are my immediate family, please stop watching. Second of all, how did you find this? What are you doing here? Bye. Okay, so now that my family's gone, and you know what? They were probably never here. These are the 3 projects that I've been working on for my family. I have one more in mind that I don't have right now, but let's talk about these. So I bought these 3 yarns from Sewrella's Spring Tonals collection. I know that I'm making these for the holidays, and yes, they are spring colors. I think they look great any time of the year. I bought them in the spring. I had only been knitting for maybe 2 months, 3 months at the time, and I didn't quite understand how patterns work. I didn't understand that you need more than 100 grams of yarn to make most like sizable things, so I had to improvise a bit. The 100 grams of yarn problem is going to be a common theme here, but I think I'm getting through it. So my gift for my mom is this self-drafted feather and fan type stitch scarf. It is finished. I finished it just a few days ago. I have to block it, so I think that the lace will like bloom a lot more and look a lot better. It is kind of short. I'm hoping she is okay with that. It is still like, I mean, it does still like, it does act like a scarf, so I think that it'll be fine. I'm also hoping that it will grow with the blocking. I'm gonna show you up close a bit more. The feather and fan stitch is a pretty like common traditional lace stitch. It's one of the easiest ones. It looks a lot harder than it is, or it looks a lot more complicated than it is. I did 3 repeats of the pattern across, and then I added a few like selvage stitches on the edges, and that's really it. Some things about this is I have gone on a whole purling journey while I've been knitting. I started knitting English because that's the YouTube video that taught me, and I eventually switched to continental because I thought moving the yarns from front to back between knits and purls was kind of complicated. Continental, I guess, made a little bit more sense, but it felt really clunky to me. Eventually, I settled on doing the Norwegian purl because, you know, Arne and Carlos are just so cute and they swear by it, so that's what I decided to do. I think that one makes sense when you're doing ribbing, I guess. You keep the yarn at the back and it's like easier in some ways. Once I got sick of doing like entire rows of Norwegian purl, if you know what a Norwegian purl is like, you'll know that that's like kind of silly. I learned how to knit combination, and that's actually how I've been knitting most of everything. So combination is where you do your purls facing the wrong way because that's the easier way to purl, and then you have to remember, or you have to like read your stitches to know which stitches are facing the wrong way and knit or purl or whatever accordingly. And I did this entire cardigan in combination. I, started with a bunch of different techniques, and combination is how I ended up feeling the most comfortable. So I feel like that's the way I knit now. But with this scarf, there are rows where you do several knit two togethers after a row of purls. And if you're knitting combination, all your purls are facing the wrong way. If you do a knit two together, that doesn't really work if all your stitches are facing the wrong way. You have to do a lot of like switching the stitches around, or maybe there's a way, I just don't know how to do it. So I at first was knitting combination and then spending a lot of time switching the order of the stitches so that I could knit two together. I tried actually not knitting two together and doing a slip slip knit, but because of the way the yarn is plied, I guess it didn't look as good as the knit two together. So basically, eventually I figured out how to properly purl continental. I still don't like it, but I can do it. And when the stitches have to be facing the right way. That was a very long story, but that's what I do. If you didn't understand what any of that meant, I'm very sorry, but I think the girlies who hate purling will understand. Anyway, so this is the scarf and I'm quite proud of it, and I am hoping to block it probably tonight, and I will show you what it looks like next time. Next is my present for my sister-in-law. This is a scarf number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is another color from the Sewrella spring collection. I picked this one for my sister-in-law because this was one of her wedding colors and I just thought this would look really nice on her. I should mention that all of these yarns are fingering weight, 100% superwash merino, and it's about like 400 yards per 100 grams. I really like this pattern. I think that it is easy but perfectly interesting enough where each of the rows is ever so slightly different that it keeps me interested, but it is not too complicated to do while I'm doing other things. So I really like that. I just put it on hold a bit while I was working on a few other things, but I'm hoping to finish this up very soon as well and get it to the blocking boards. So as I mentioned, there's a theme of running out of yarn with these projects. I got confused when I was working on this project. The original pattern is written in like European terms. So I got a little confused between the double stranding and the single stranding and the centimeters and inches and the 50-gram balls versus 100-gram balls. Basically, I got confused. I thought this whole thing would fit in 100 grams. It does not. I was feeling a little confident working on this. I worked all the way till the center and I weighed the yarn and found I only had 39 grams left, and I weighed the other side of it, and this side of it was like 66 grams, meaning the whole skein was even more than 100 grams, and I still went over half. So I panicked a little. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. If I was going to add other colors, if I was going to change the pattern or something. I really didn't know, but I was like, I can do this. I can figure this out. And so I realized that when I bought these spring collection yarns, I also bought a set of minis, and I did have a mini in this color. The only difference is that these are nylon sock minis, meaning there is 20% nylon in them. It's a slightly different fiber composition, but I think that is okay. I am double stranding this because it calls for a DK weight yarn. And so I am using the nylon sock yarn for the second half as one of the strands, and then until that runs out. So that way the nylon is at least, spread throughout the scarf, which I don't know if that will make a huge difference, but I just didn't want all of the different yarn to be in like one spot. So I'm hoping that that looks fine. It is a little bit curved right now because the edge stitch that is part of the pattern is kind of tight. So I'm hoping that this blocks out flat, but it's a scarf. I think it doesn't need to be super flat. It's fine. But yeah, that's the scarf. Hoping to finish it and start blocking it tonight. We'll see. Lastly, we have the Oslo hat. So this is the Oslo hat by petiteknit. It calls for 2 strands of fingering weight yarn to make like a DK type gauge. I actually had a few issues with this one, but I think we're on the right path now. So as I mentioned many times, I only have 100 grams of each skein. This pattern calls for 150 grams for an adult size, and I really wanted to make this hat for my brother because I just felt like it fit his personal style. So I took 2 minis from my mini set that were, one is the exact same color and the other is like a lighter green. And I'm using those 2 minis for the first part of the project. I started with the lighter green and I kind of blended it into the darker green. So altogether with the 2 minis and this skein that is about 110 grams, actually, I should have 150. Like I said, there's a slightly different fiber content in the minis. I decided to use the minis on the brim because I figured the brim would have the most wear and tear, so maybe it would make more sense to put the nylon there. I don't know if that would matter, but that's what I did. I also decided to use this other color for the brim because this is actually, I didn't really want a contrast color. I want this to be a solid colored hat, but this part will be on the inside, so it'll just be a little, you know, treat. It'll just be a little surprise if anyone sees it. But yeah, so the other problem I had was I didn't gauge swatch. I was like, you know, most people say the hat is the swatch, which I guess is what happened. I worked on this and I was getting through it really quickly, and then I realized that my stitches were way too big, and I was supposed to have, I want to say 23 stitches this way, and I only had 16, and that is not even close. So I frogged the whole thing and I tried again with smaller needles. I've actually never had to do that, but I did that for this one and I think it turned out well. It's a lot denser of a fabric now. I measured it and it does actually match gauge now. A few things about that. So I have a few theories for why I didn't meet gauge the first time, because I usually do. I don't know. One is this yarn I think is thicker than the yarn suggested in the pattern, because the yardage for this one is lower, meaning that the grams like per yard is actually higher. So this yarn was thicker, meaning it would make sense that it would just take up more space. The other thing is I'm currently using magic loop for this iteration, but the first time I was using a small loop of a circular needle, and I think that it was a little bit too big. It was bigger than the actual circumference of the hat. So I think that actually caused me to knit a little bit looser than I would have otherwise. I'm not really sure. But I still sized down the needle because I didn't want to just like force myself to knit tighter. That's not fun. I don't like knitting tightly. I don't like putting a lot of effort into making the stitches. So this is the beginning. I'm going to keep working on this and I'm hoping to give you an update on it very soon. And it's getting dark, so I should wrap up. So I just wanted to mention that I'm making this channel because I've fallen in love with knitting so much over the last 11 months, and I just have so much to say about it, and I have loved engaging with the community both on Instagram and TikTok, and I thought I might try to engage with the community here. I love watching knitters on YouTube talking about their knitting, and I just wanted to be part of that. So thank you if you're still watching right now. I really appreciate it. The other thing is, knitting has helped me so much in my life because I'm in a different phase of my life right now where I'm dealing with chronic illness, and that's another story for another time. But I think that like people that have chronic illness, I think it's a pretty common thing to find solace in like crafting, and that definitely happened for me. And it's just like, it's been such a blessing for me to have this hobby or this passion while I'm dealing with this illness. And yeah, so I just wanted to say it, knitting it just makes me so happy. The last two things I want to talk about were a few things that I bought recently. One is I bought some yarn from the Quarter Stitch in New Orleans when I was there for the Eras tour. I got two colors. One is a kind of dusty purple color, and the other is a variegated black and white like newspaper theme. I'll put the names up right here. It's from a dyer local to Louisiana called Sugarplum Circus. I really like buying local yarns when I am traveling, so that's what I did. I wanted to remember the tour, I wanted to remember the trip, and it felt right. So my plans for these yarns are, I want to make some socks out of the newspaper type yarn, and then for the 3 skeins of purple, I want to make a petiteknit Monday sweater, and I want to strand it with, or like double strand it with this yarn called make it tweed, like a rainbow color. So basically it's going to add this like rainbow confetti to the purple, and I think it'll look really nice. And I plan to call it kind of like my Eras Tour sweater or my Karma sweater, because I think the purple with the confetti reminds me of like the finale and you know, all the rainbow colors of the midnight set and the Karma finale. If you have seen anything about the Eras Tour, maybe you know what I'm talking about. So that's my plan for that. I'm hoping to work on that hopefully maybe over Thanksgiving, so that might be coming soon. The last thing is I wanted to talk about my chiaogoo knitting needle set. I finally caved and bought it. I was avoiding buying this for so long because, you know, it is an investment, but I figured after 11 months of knitting, I can buy the tools that I know I'm going to use. I have a lot of like fixed, not interchangeable chiaogoo metal needles, and I really like them over any other needles that I have. So I finally got the set, and you know, these are all the ones that I'm not currently using. It has all the cords and all the little accessories to like stoppers for the ends of the cords, the keys, and a few stitch markers and things like that. I've been really liking having this because, like I mentioned, I have so many projects going on, first of all, and it's nice to have multiple needles, but also being able to just switch sizes on the fly is really, really useful. Before, I used to buy needles and just like pray that they would work, and I never had a problem. But like I said, this is the first time I had to size down, and I was really glad that I had the needles right away. So yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to share. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Hello, my name is Carla. I've been knitting for 11 years, and